Welcome back to my channel. I'm Tanvir Kang, and today I'm going to share my top tips on how you can get a 9 in GCSE Biology. I'll break down the best study techniques, common mistakes to avoid, and top exam tips to help you get that 9. Whether you struggle with memorizing the content or your exam technique, I've got you covered. Let's get started. So, how can you effectively memorize the content? Biology is one of the most content-rich subjects in the GCSE. So, if you're struggling with the amount of content, don't worry, you're not alone. How can you overcome this? Well, I use the technique called active recall. So what you can do is you can get flashcards, write a question on one side and write the answer on the other, and then test yourself. Or, my favourite revision technique is blurting. So what this is get a whiteboard, or you can use a piece of paper, and think of a specific topic. So let's say respiration. And you're going to write down everything that you know about that topic. So you might write down the equation, anaerobic and aerobic, the differences, and after you've done all of that, compare it with your notes. See if there are any differences. And that way, you'll see if there are any gaps in your understanding. Now, the next revision tip is the most important for biology, and probably all of the GCSEs, and that's using the specification. The specification or syllabus will have everything that you need to know for the exam. So, I want you to go through it and check off each of the topics which you know. If there are any which you don't know, I want you to use something called a CGP book. Here's one which I used, and it gives a great breakdown of each topic. Now, before the exam, you don't want to be going through piles and piles of notes. Instead, use Mindmaps for complex topics. Some which are really easy to display on Mindmaps are things like the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle. Drawing Mindmaps will help vary your revision techniques. That way, when you go to revise, you're not just reading your notes, you're now looking at a mind map. It makes it more interesting and engages your brain more. Now, this next revision technique I use the most. And at first when you do it, it's going to feel a bit weird and awkward, but it is by far the best revision technique I used. And that's talking to yourself. Now, don't go crazy and start talking to yourself, but when you're revising, rather than reading your notes, say it out loud. That way, you're using your eyes to read it, and you're using your mouth to say it, and your ears to hear it. You're engaging with 3 of your senses. And that is going to make sure it stays in your head so much better. So use this for not only biology, but for all of your subjects. Now, similar to that last tip, is teaching someone else the content. Now, you can either do this with a family member or go to a friend and just explain a concept from the start to the end. This will help your brain retain the information. Next up, common mistakes and how you can avoid them. Well, one of the most common mistakes is not using the keywords. Biology is one of those GCSEs where you have to use keywords to get the marks. And that leads me on to saying past papers are how to perfect this. If you haven't already, look at my other video which explains how to best use past papers. But they'll let you understand what the mark scheme is looking for each question. Don't lose silly marks. Biology and the sciences and a lot of other GCSEs use something called command words in the questions. Now, what I mean by that is a verb which is telling you what to do. So it might be describe or state or explain. And when you get a question like this, make sure you do what it says. If it says state, just say it. If it says explain, break it down into a step-by-step method. Now, in every biology exam, you're going to get a required practical question, 99% of the time. So before the exam, learn the method and the variables. That way, when the question comes up, you can literally just list it off by memory. Now, for my top tips on how you can get a 9 in GCSE Biology. First tip is what I said earlier. Past papers. Past papers are the best way to get a 9. But don't only do the past papers, study the mark schemes. They'll let you know what keywords you need to say for each question. And that leads me on to saying the next tip is that each question only needs 1 or 2 words for each mark. So you don't need to write sentences for each question, write it in short form. Of course, don't write in short form if the question says write in full sentences. But for the majority of exam boards, you don't need to write in full sentences. Now, don't drop easy marks. This will improve when you do more and more past papers, but underline the keywords in each question. And whenever you get a calculation question, make sure that you round to what they say. If they say 3 significant figures, put it as 3 significant figures. Don't drop these easy marks. There you have it, my top tips for getting a 9 in GCSE Biology. If you follow these techniques, you're sure to smash that exam. If you found this video helpful, like, comment and subscribe so that you never miss a tip. Good luck with your studies, and remember, you've got this. Thanks for watching.